Hello friends, and today I want to talk to you guys about the true unmatched speed farming build for monks. This is also really great for leveling gems. You're going to be able to do, even with decent gear, you're going to be able to do T13 in 3 minutes. Just unbelievably powerful. And so I'm talking about the LTK Monk. What's really cool about the LTK Monk is that there's multiple different variations that you can have. You can do one that's LAN based. Then there's 2 versions that revolve around the Sunwuko set, one that uses Focus and Restraint and one that doesn't. I personally am going to talk about the one that does not use Focus and Restraint because I don't like having to use a generator. I think it slows down the build a little bit and is unnecessary. However, if you want to have it, it's wonderful for helping keep up your Sweeping Wind stacks, and that's a problem for some people. So let's talk about the build first. I'm using Blinding Flash, Faith in the Light. This increases your damage and it blinds enemies all around you. The blinding effect is actually really nice because it helps control elites and things like that so you don't get attacked. Also, I am blanking on the name right now. I apologize. Give me 1 second here as I click every button on my keyboard. We're using the Laws of Seth, which makes Blinding Flash restore 165 spirit. You do need this. You absolutely need this, at least I do, to have enough spirit to keep casting Lashing Tail Kick because it is rather expensive. And you'll notice that the cooldown of Blinding Flash is incredibly low, especially because we're using Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. More on that in a minute. We're using we're using Lashing Tail Kick, and the rune is Sweeping Armada. Now, the reason I'm using physical is simply because I have a Sunwuko's amulet that gives physical damage, and this is the only amulet that I've found for Sunwuko that's any good at all, so I decided to just do the physical version of Lashing Tail Kick. You could also use the Vulture Claw Kick, which is fire. Both of these are going to be just fine for farming T13. Inner Wind, or Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. Absolutely, you have to use this. You need Sweeping Wind, and Inner Storm gives you more spirit regen. I'm using Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed. This is useful just to help give you a bunch more toughness because you have a chance to dodge. And you can Dashing Strike just about every 4 seconds anyways, especially because in a speed farming build you're using Geom, so it's always up. Depending on your gear, and how strong you feel, you could also use Way of the Falling Star. If you're doing the Focus and Restraint build, you could also use Radiance, because then you get increased attack speed on your generator, so that goes off faster, which is probably what I would do if you're using Focus and Restraint. For Epiphany, you can use Desert Shroud. The other option is once you're feeling pretty strong, you can switch to Insight, and then you don't actually need Blinding Flash anymore. You can, because you'll be getting enough spirit regen through Epiphany. But it's really all based around gear. And then for the mantra, you can either use Mantra of Conviction, Annihilation. This is just a ton more damage, so that's good. Or you can use Mantra of Salvation with Agility for some defense. As for passives, Harmony, Momentum, Beacon of Yatar, and Seize the Initiative are all good. Near-Death Experience is also a reasonable substitute for maybe Momentum or something, depending on what you need. It's really gear dependent, so that's why this build is nice, that there's so much variability in how you can make your character work. Alright, let's talk about gear. Now, since I'm using the Sunwuko set, not Focus and Restraint, we're going to talk about these items, and then we'll kind of talk about how you can change them around depending on what you want to use. So for this, for the helm, you're always going to use the Gyana Nakashu, because the fireball that explodes out of you is really strong, and it increases Lashing Tail Kick damage by almost 100% if you get a good one. Mine is, in middle of the road. Stats, Dex, Vite, Critical Hit Chance are solid choices. Shoulders, Dex, Vite, you can get all resist, you can do area damage, cooldown reduction can be good depending on if you're using Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac or not. For chest armor, Dex, Vite, life percent, you could get all resists. You can get secondary resists on gear. If you're using Harmony, you definitely want to get secondary resists on gear. That's important. The amulet, you're looking for physical skills. I think ideally you'd be better off getting like 100% critical hit chance and critical hit damage, 100% critical hit damage and 10% critical hit chance rather than the dexterity. But I'm not going to complain, it's still good. This is a really nice one because it gives physical resist and reduces damage from ranged attacks. I'm really happy with the amulet. For the bracers, Nemesis Bracers is fantastic for both the LAN version and this version of Sunwuko's build. If you're going to be using the Focus and Restraint, however, you might be better off using Spirit Guards to help reduce your damage taken. And you're looking for whatever element you're using, either physical or fire, dex, vite, and critical hit chance. For gloves, you're going to be looking at Sunwuko's for Focus and Restraint, or this build, and you want dex, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, area damage can be good. Now, if you're doing the Lan version, you want Mage Fists, because this increases your fire skill damage by up to 20%, which is very strong. I should also mention that if you're using the Lan version of this, you absolutely are going to be using the Fire rune, because you're going to be using Mage Fist and Cinder Coat. And I should have said that earlier, the Lan version uses Cinder Coat as opposed to the Sunwuko set. In the shoulders instead of Lan, you can use Corruption, which are craftable shoulders. The reason they're nice is that they add a gold radius pickup, and that can be nice. You can also use, I don't remember what they're called. It's a hard name to pronounce. Lefebvre's Soliloquy. These are nice because they reduce the damage taken. Again, that depends. So you want to use these shoulders right here, Lefebvre's Soliloquy, if you're not going to be using Gold Wrap for your belt in the Lan version, because Gold Wrap makes you more or less invincible during T13 farming. I know it's a little bit confusing to keep all of this together, but we're going to do our best. For the non-Lan build, you're going to use Koshiro's Soul, like every other Sweeping Winds build. It's really very nice. It makes it so you get more stacks. Now, if you're using the Focus and Restraint, you can actually opt for, you could use Gold Wrap. You could also just use the Witching Hour to increase damage, because you don't have to worry so much about having Sweeping Wind stacks high, because you're constantly using your Generator main skill, which then crits, and then you have higher chance. They keep Sweeping Winds up, keep Sweeping Wind stacks up. For rings, if you're using Lan, you obviously need Litany of the Undaunted and the Wailing Host. I don't have an Ancient. The reason I'm not using Lan, I would prefer to use Lan almost exclusively, except I only have 600 Paragon, and I don't have all Ancient gear, so it's just not as good as using Sunwuko for the time being. But if you're using Lan, you obviously need Litany of the Undaunted and the Wailing Host. If you're doing Focus and Restraint, you need a Focus and Restraint. So that takes care of those rings. For me, I'm using Convention of the Elements along with Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. I really like Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac because it gives me constant uptime on all of my skills without having to use a bunch of cooldown reduction, and it works out pretty well. As for stats, you're looking for things like critical hit chance, critical hit damage. You can use cooldown. Obviously, you need sockets. Dex is okay. Like on this ring, I have Dex. All those are all right. Again, secondary resists are nice if you can grab them. For pants, you're looking at Sunwuko's, Dex, Vite, Armor, then secondary resist, you get some physical resist. That's pretty ideal. If you're using LTK, Lan, you're best off getting Swampland Waders, but those are Witch Doctor exclusive pants, so you have to get one of your friends to give them to you, because you can get elemental damage increase on those. However, for the most of us, you don't need those. Just use any pants you have. Pox folds are fine. Just any ancient non-set pants will work for the Lan version. And when we come to boots, Riviera Dancers are, the ideal boots because they make Lashing Tail Kick do a lot more damage and attack faster. Looking for Dex, Vite, all resists, Lashing Tail Kick damage. If you don't have all resists, you can get armor or movement speed, and then secondary can be where you get your resist from. And now when it comes to weapon, there's again a lot of flexibility here. If you're doing Focus and Restraint, well, I guess every single build always uses Scarbringer because it makes Lashing Tail Kick a lot stronger. So no matter what, you'll be using Scarbringer. You want a high damage roll, then damage percent can be good. Dex is strong. Reducing resource cost reduction can be good. Cooldown reduction, all of that stuff are all very useful. Now, if you're doing Focus and Restraint, you can use Crystal Fist. Now, this will make you stronger, so you won't die as much. That's a very viable option. If you're doing this version of the Sunwuko build, you need Vengeful Wind, because this increases the stacks of Sweeping Wind, and it just makes it so it's on you more often, as you'll see here. Now, and it slowly builds up, with these two have a nice interaction like that. And if you're going to be using Lan, you can use Ingeom in the offhand here. And then that makes it so you can jump from Elite Pack to Elite Pack. Hopefully, that was fairly logical and thought out. So let's move on to items in the cube. Again, some variability here. Since I'm using Vengeful Wind, I'm cubing Ingeom. However, if this is the Lan version, you could equip Ingeom and then cube the Furnace right here. And there's actually something else that you can use. You can use Rabid Strike here if you want to. So while Epiphany is active, you have another spirit that shoots out Lashing Tail Kicks whenever you're doing your Lashing Tail Kicks. And this can be pretty fun if you just want to mix it up a little bit, change your playstyle slightly. It's kind of neat. Again, this only really works if you're able to do the Lan version, because then you can have Ingeom equipped instead of Vengeful Wind, and then you, instead of cubing the Furnace, you cube Rapid Strike. And if you're doing the Focus and Restraint build, you're going to be happiest using probably Flying Dragon, because Flying Dragon gives you that extra attack speed while attacking. As for the armor slot, if you're using Blinding Flash, absolutely use Laws of Seth. If you need the Spirit Regen, this is a great armor choice. You can also use Cinder Coat here. So for Focus and Restraint, Cinder Coat can be good because instead of using Blinding Flash, you have a Generator skill. This helps reduce the cost of things. And then for the ring, if you're using sets, use Royal Ring of Grandeur. If you're doing Lan, you can use Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac here, and then that way you always have things on cooldown. As for legendary gems, I'm using Bane of the Trapped, Bane of the Powerful, and the Gogok of Swiftness. If you're using Gold Wrap, you might be happy switching one of those out for Boon of the Hoarder. This gives you a lot more gold, which makes you invincible because Gold Wrap adds armor for gold picked up. And so I want you guys to notice that first of all, my Paragon is not very high. I'm only 637. My gems are not very high either. You know, maybe level 70 for one of them. For points here, you know, you're looking at crit chance, crit damage, cooldown reduction, attack speed, resist all, armor or life, then life regen, resource cost reduction or area damage, depending on which you feel like you need more of, some life per hit, then gold find. Here you want max movement speed. I like getting max spirit. It just feels nice to have. And then I just bump the rest into dexterity.